Open your eyes, time to wake up. Enough is enough is enough is enough.
We are not live, but we're here with another episode of the Underflow Podcast. And today, here with me is the exquisite, abnormal being and activist and wonderful unicorn that is Larz. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for, thanks for getting this together. I'm stoked to be here with you, uh, meeting you.
Yeah, likewise. We were just kind of, chatting before we recorded a little bit, and I was just saying it's been so nice getting to know you, and I've been watching your content for probably the last 2 or 3 years now, which have been a really tough time for me personally and a tough time for everybody, on at large. And I think it's been really inspiring. You have like the palate cleanser posts. So you're posting information, you're posting resources, you're posting education, but you're also sharing humor and you're sharing play and whimsy in a time where it's so desperately needed. And I think of Asada Shakur because she always talked about how revolution needs to be full of love, right? And we need to be building community and, bringing the light into our lives because otherwise we're just wallowing in more of the darkness of, these oppressive systems, right? And I really just want to say before we get going here that I love you like a comrade, like what you share for people, what you do for people. I was so shocked when you like messaged me one day. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is Larz. I think this is really Larz." And we started collabing, Time for Revolution and Abnormalize Being, and I feel honored to be, working with you. And as I was just saying, I'm going to be moving. I'm originally from Detroit. I lived in Edinburgh, Scotland for a while. Now I'm in Denver. I'm moving to LA next summer, so I'm hoping we can be doing some collaborating in person and lots of fun projects. And we were kind of talking about the pros and cons of being forward-facing people, but the necessity of using our privilege to do what we can for our communities and to share resources. And we're already living in a police state, so we were talking a little bit about surveillance, and obviously I would love for you to tell us your life story a little bit, in our time or whatever. But yeah, you were talking about, infiltration even in person, people like CIA and everything being there in person. And I wanted to tell you, I've started a festival, a music and arts independent festival, combining genres and artists back in Detroit when I was in college. And my other friend who I formed the festival with, his name is Sophocles, and he's originally from Greece, and he's now living in Berlin, but we were best friends in Detroit. And he just told me a story about that, how we might have been infiltrated, and that there was, a guy in a band that didn't really fit, he just appeared, and we never knew who he was friends with or how he even knew everyone else in this band, because we knew everybody else in this band. And at one point, Sophocles was talking about the opioid epidemic and how worried he was for our generation and those younger than us. And this is pre-fentanyl, it's like over 10 years ago. And this guy's nodding, and then he gets out this briefcase, and it's full of heroin and cocaine, and like in Detroit, where like no one can afford like nice drugs anyways. And so all these years later, Sophocles was like, I think that kid was CIA, man. Like honestly, like he
Mm.
was at our events. He was in one of the bands playing our shows, so if you could talk to that, like kind of what we were talking about, like using privilege and trying to empower people and, coming from a humble place to try to help other people. I really appreciate that you do that.
Um, yeah, uh, hmm. So I was raised by activist community commune. My dad has been a vocal activist long before I was born. Uh, yeah, my dad is the real Patch Adams. The movie with Robin Williams is based on him, and he went to medical school and didn't like our medical system because he said it was devoid of humanity. and decided to start a commune with my mom and their friends from various walks of life, from nurses to psychiatrists. They wanted to do a social experiment of running a free clinic. I mean, I say social experiment because it just wasn't being done. Or like not many places were doing this in the US in that time. And so it was running a free clinic out of their commune and not accepting the nuclear family. And there were hippies and they were having parties and they were on the radar. They were doing political activism, and they were definitely on some lists, and the CIA, FBI would definitely send people in to, keep an eye on them, see if they were, planning anything too nefarious, I imagine. Who knows? We never talked to the agents that were lucky enough to party with my parents in the commune. But yeah, when I started my page about 4 years ago, Abnormalize Being, I knew there was a lot of anonymous meme pages, and I knew there was some that weren't, and some that blended activism and memes and whatnot. And I just knew that because I already had a lot of friends following the page when it started, that knew me in real life, because I transitioned from my personal page that I've had for 15 years to this one, that I was going to be forward facing. I was going to show face, because I knew that would be one way. It could be a tool to connect with real people. And if they saw me in the wild, that there's more of a chance that they'll say hi and are willing to and wanting to like skip the small talk and talk about real stuff. And I really, from the beginning, early on, I really was immediately like meeting people that were coming up to me and just like having really incredible conversations. And it affirmed that it was a good idea for me to show face. And then I also realized that would also allow me to show that I'm not a CIA or FBI plant, which, regardless of how like strong and of a good person we could think an anonymous page is, and I do know, I like really, there are anonymous page comrades who I love and respect and like do trust and know they're not an op or a fed, and like respect their need for anonymity. But I also knew in my case, given the like wide range of what I post, that that it would be more helpful for me to just like be myself. I don't want to like be performative. I just like am this way, and I am like hyper fixated on revolution since I was a kid, because my dad raised me to be really aware of all of it. And my first memories were like actions in the street in DC, because I was raised in Arlington, Virginia, right next to DC, like 10 minutes from the Pentagon. And so speaking out was just normalized to me, and to the point where my dad was talking about how the rapidness of climate change then was going to lead to like, mass death, human extinction level, and lots of living things going extinct in the next 100 years. And I would be like, so what do we have to live for? Like, what's the, if you're already never shutting up, and a lot of people didn't want to hear those realities back then in the 90s, even into the 2000s. uh but he was like, well, that's why we're clowns, and we can't let them take our joy and play, and we have to make it fun to resist. And
Wow.
and so it really like instilled and he exposed me to like the famine and starvation and genocides and uh, invasions, U.S. invasions that were like, happening in the 90s. He would show me newspaper clippings, and like we would just like cry together, and he would make me very aware of like the privilege we have and like the safety we have here, and that we can't, like, we have to feel connected to these people like they're our family, and we can't uh take like our privilege for granted, and we have to use our voices and stay silly.
And stay silly. Yeah, which can be hard to do in the face of oppression, but that kind of underlines the importance of community and being able to be vulnerable and, like you said, have these deep conversations. I grew up between Detroit and Flint. So then when I was living in
Mm,
Detroit for a long time, teaching and finishing my undergrad, the Flint water crisis was happening. And my younger sister is still in Michigan. And I'm like, you gotta get out of there. Because she was going to move to Columbia, but then her and her girlfriend broke up. So now
mm,
she's just in Michigan. And I'm like, you gotta like move to a place with more comrades, right? And
mhm,
because it can be so lonely and soul crushing out there for so many people who are kind of in, the gears of it, just feel like another cog in the machinery, of the rat race. And I think it's so beautiful to hear about communities who empower each other like that. Like there really are, potentialities like that. My father, his whole community probably should have been a Native American reservation, but we don't even really know what tribe we are. And his whole childhood is like the bad commune stories. Is like he kind of like ended up just like escaping the farm when he was a teenager or whatever, because, it just got too crazy and he was taking care of too many kids and whatnot. So I feel like the media manipulation, especially as intense as it's gotten today, I feel like a lot of people don't even know what they're looking at online and what's real and what's not. And, you and I sound like we both come from lineages of knowing that already and dealing with that because my grandfather wrote for the Detroit Free Press. And
mm,
because he was writing on the side of civil rights, the KKK targeted him too. So they were burning crosses in my grandparents' yard and leaving letters in
mm,
the mailbox, threatening to rape my mother and horrible, awful things like that. Because solidarity terrifies people who are in, positions of power within these oppressive systems. And so
mhm,
obviously, someone like your dad and your mom and you and the whole community you come from is like a nightmare for the establishment because you're showing how possible it is to lead a life that's full of support and silliness and joy and uplifting each other as creatives too, because I feel like being creative is such a necessary act of revolution right now. I mean, I know you're involved with so many different communities and you share a lot of like the puppet workshop stuff too, and you guys host events and stuff like that. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that as well.
mm. Yeah, I'm really, yeah, first of all, just like I've grown to really be grateful for my upbringing. I think I had one of the most charmed upbringings of anyone I've ever met. Um, Being at around 12, starting to travel around the world. Well, before that, I was, born. the community was around. My mom had a dozen miscarriages before me.
Wow.
And there was like, this is on a Super 8 video. There's like 40 people of our family and closest friends that at my home birth, partying, while welcoming me into the world.
Awesome.
And, you know, all of those adults and people that were there that day, like, have treated me like family my whole life, even if we weren't like blood related. So I was really, wasn't raised by a nuclear family. And so I really felt the, like, it takes a village, and how I was raised by a community and not just my parents, and how that, and in that I saw how each, you know, person in the community would, you know, step up for their, or not step up. And I think part of being in community and being a mirror, because we're all mirrors to each other. Like, we see the qualities we want to reflect, and we see the qualities we don't want to reflect. And yeah, like when I was going to protest at a young age in the stroller, there was, you know, community members or extended, you know, other communities that came into DC to come to actions that had big puppets, and, you know, or had, like, my mom and dad would make a bunch of costumes, and like my dad had an asshole costume, like where his eye would be coming out of the asshole, and then he gathered like multiple members' pubic hair and glued their pubes around the asshole and like on the taint, and, you know, would go outside of like political buildings in DC and try to, you know, interview and talk to politicians, and would have like melted chocolate bars in his pocket, like unwrapped melted chocolate bars in his pocket. Yeah, to, you know, give people edible turds. And
Beautiful.
and that part of what got me to move to LA from the Bay. I was in the Bay for like almost a dozen years, in Northern California, East Bay, Oakland, Berkeley, mostly Oakland. And there's just so much creative community here in LA, and I think it can get a bad rap, and it's not a city for everyone, but there's so many creatives from every walk of life. And side note, I believe we're all creative, just in the same way, like on my page, Abnormalize Being, I believe we're all abnormal, and that normal is a myth. And I believe we're all creative. And one of my mantras is like, we're all creative. We're all infinitely more creative than our colonized imaginations would ever have us believe. And that's like way more inherently a part of our human nature than working 40 hours a week. And we're really meant to share in that creativity. It's not meant to be insular, and our shared creativity isn't always meant to be for profit gains. It's meant, you know, to connect us and to connect with our sense of awe or wonder, or challenge us, or our sense of play. And yeah, in the same way with like our creativity, my undergrad degree is in anthropology, sociology, and peace and conflict studies. That's the other side of it, because I went to a Quaker school in North Carolina. And so I identify as a clownthropologist. And I see the world through a lens that we're all clowns, and we all have it's in our human nature to be spontaneously playful, silly, to enjoy laughing with loved ones, to uh yeah, to revel in irreverence and absurdity, and to and or like, yeah, not all clowning is hee hee ha ha for me. It's also connecting just with our shared humanity. Uh, I I clowned in I think over 40 countries around the world, in hospitals, orphanages, nursing homes, prisons, refugee camps, displacement camps, mental institutions, wherever they let us. And I was in like Syrian refugee camps in Jordan, and also Palestinian refugee camps in Jordan, um, and all over South and Central America, and in um, Morocco, Japan, Sri Lanka, Cuba when I was 15, when we weren't even like supposed to go there. Um,
Badass.
and clowning all over the world. Obviously, it really humbled me, and I'm like just so grateful I got to go to these places and connect with the people, not like as a tourist, but like with their humanity. And it showed me that everyone, all cultures, all demographics, all age groups have a capacity. I'm not meant to be everyone's clown, and I never will be, and that's not the point. We're not everyone's clown. Not all people are our people. That's okay. But that we all have a deep like capacity and inherent desire to connect in a spontaneous, novel moment with a clown entity or a group of clowns, because we're usually in groups. And so I really see everyone as having that clown in them. And I learned that when I was like clowning in a hospital, that it's deep energy work, and I was reflecting their energy with them, and they were reacting to me, and then I was reacting to them, and then they were reacting to, and then I would leave and I'd be like, wait, they clowned for me just as much as I was clowning for them, because I was just reacting to them and then they were reacting to me.
Yeah, 100.
And so, uh, yeah, part of how my approach to my page was like, I didn't just want the page to be about me. I wanted it to be about all of us, for all of us, and knowing that like not everything is for you that's posted on the page necessarily, but it's more to also highlight the infinite spectrum of our shared humanity,
Well
I
said.
think.
Well said. That's beautiful. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that because, again, they're caught up in whatever daily woes or, the working class is super oppressed. I mean, even, hearing my dad say it, because usually he'd like, he'll address it, but not like he did recently. He had just said, the worse it gets, it's like the working class is being stacked on top of itself. And so then the heavier the burden gets for everybody, the people at the bottom are crushed even worse. So I feel like a lot of people feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And I think for people like you and I think we feel the opposite. We feel like the light is coming because everybody's, starting to see the truth for what it is, the capitalist duopoly keeping the welfare state going, right? And I think the more people that can see through that, the more, it's like the first problem. The first way to solve a problem is to address the problem, is to, accept it. And I think that's hard for a lot of people because they're so complacent. They have been for a long time, and they've been really privileged, and now it's starting to affect them. And I think that's something really interesting about people like you and I. We grew up around privilege, and we come from privilege. I feel like I had a really charmed life being raised by my parents and my mom's parents, my grandfather, who's a journalist, and my grandmother, who was, really big into gardening, green thumb, and everything like that, and just kind of being a freewheeling artist from the get-go, seeing the vital importance of sharing creativity and sharing art, and that's what my critical thesis is on to earn my
Mm.
MFA is how works of art are revolutionary portals linking, individuals to collective struggle throughout time, right? And obviously your dad saw through all of this a long time ago, and hence why building the community and becoming the activist that he was and is. Yeah, I mean, obviously I saw Patch Adams a long time ago, and then I was like reading about it, and obviously like there's been, disagreements here and there. I feel like on like some wiki page there was like a quote from your dad that was so good that was like Robin Williams got paid like $21 million to impersonate him for like 4 weeks, but then he didn't donate to the hospital or the community or whatever. And then eventually they made up and maybe he did donate or something. I know your dad said nice stuff about Mr. Williams once he passed away. Rest in peace. I mean, it's a really moving film, but obviously it's like the Hollywood dramatization. So yeah, what was that like? Because
Mm.
that's something that I didn't even know about you till like more recently, and I was like, wait, what? So
Yeah. Uh, it was for me, it was the the norm growing up, just having this wacky dad who always dressed like a clown, always dressed in like kind of like the deep drop crotch, colorful pants that were either made by my mom or this other community member, Heidi,
mm,
and very colorful long hair and like a
yeah,
handlebar mustache. And so, yeah, that at a young age for me, just, it was embarrassing a lot oftentimes, but it also just like was so normalized.
mm,
And then as I got older and, like also started studying like anthropology, sociology, I really saw the ways it successfully disrupted any space we entered or diffused or like piqued people's curiosity to create space for uh, interaction
right,
um, as a clown and just as a human wanting to connect with other humans. Um, and so then, but we were like before the movie, we were like I know my family, like my parents didn't fully let me know how like much of a financial struggle things were.
sure,
Um, but I know that they were like scraping by and barely, and with the help of community getting through that time. Um, and yeah, then the movie came out and well, the movie Hook was like one of my favorite movies growing up, and like even before Patch Adams came out. And so for me, and I'm like I think in fifth grade when they started shooting,
wow,
um, that for me it was like, oh my God, Peter Pan is gonna be my dad.
how appropriate too. Wow, I also
Yeah,
love Hook as
yeah.
well. So,
And I got to spend a week on set in the Bay Area. It was getting shot on Treasure Island. And yeah, Robin was really nice to me. And like in his off time, he would like bring me to his trailer and get me hopped up on sugar and we would play like PlayStation together. Um,
yeah, he was really into video games. That's right.
yeah, he
Yourself
was we played a lot of PlayStation and he'd get me
nice.
hopped up on sugar and was very like making me feel welcome and very kind. So, the the money Hollywood side of things is like my dad's kind of, idiot, but for as a blessing and a curse at times.
Like
And
the Lao
ho-
Tzu way, right? Like my mind
and
is so
and
empty, I'm like the idiot, like the freedom of Taoism, right?
well, and
And the
like
flip side of that.
the naivety of uh like I can take these people's word for it.
Mhm.
Um because he wouldn't lie or deceive them.
Of course.
But it's like, dude, you were talking to Hollywood execs, ding dong. You should have, shoulda, woulda, coulda had a contract lawyer read that thing probably before signing it. And,
It's like,
and so the Universal and Robin and everyone involved, like, but the execs most of all got away with, you know, not giving my dad a good end of the stick. Uh, and so yeah, we don't really get royalties. And yeah, Robin got it like, I don't know, whatever, probably after the royal, probably because it's a very popular movie.
right.
Um, the critics and reviewers kind of hated it, but it was but the people love it around the world. It's still internationally really beloved, and I think because it tells a story that is, you know, an- anti-establishment in the lack of humanity or in the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a bit non-traditional, and it has inspired people to kind of reject their status quo job and find a way to serve be a better service to their community and humanity, but doing it in their own way and finding ways to either incorporate clown or that joy side of thing, or incorporate their like care and organizing abilities. And then uh yeah, I I think it's one of the things I'm most inspired by in my dad is how he inspired other people to find their own way to not just like be like me, but to like find the ways that are authentic to you, that you want to be of service to your community and to love and to like uh, the be the leader you wish to see in the world. Or uh but growing up I was also just like Patch Adams kid
Sure.
for a long time. For a long time, the movie came out in 1998. I was in like 6th grade. So from then to probably like 20, well into my 20s, people would know that about me. They didn't even really know my name, and they would like announce that to a space. I didn't even like have the ability to let people know when, or like that I'm more than just a famous guy, a D-list celebrities kid. And
Wild.
yeah, some good therapy, uh, and yeah, just continued evolution and love, like led me to like be very grateful that I grew up as his kid, and that was like that I'm like a second generation clown activist, a revolutionary, and um, and even like my great grandfather too was wrote a column for the Richmond Times in Virginia. And I have like a couple of his books, and he was the poet laureate of Virginia at one point, and he was really radical
Wow.
uh, too. So I'm grateful to be of like a lineage that wants to reject the status quo and be public in rejecting the status quo. And yeah, actually, one of my really good friends who I haven't seen in years, who I'm going to pick up from the airport today.
That's exciting.
That is super exciting.
Wow.
She was like, Larz, I used to brag about how we were roommates. This like 14 years ago, we were roommates, and I was Patch Adams' kid's roommate, and we used to brag about that. And now, now I brag that you're Abnormalized Being and that you're a radical meme lord, and and I it's funny and interesting because a lot of people don't know who Patch Adams is, and it's like a full circle, and I'm grateful to be of that
Wow.
lineage, and I'm grateful to be my own person, and I'm yeah grateful to have I see my dad as having been like very much a walking, talking, never shutting the fuck up kind of like in-person meme lord that eventually got hired to be flown around the world to talk to all different types of people
That's
about, yeah, and so he lectured for decades around the world.
leading to you also getting to travel around the world and
Hmm.
going into all of these spaces where, especially, it's often children. I mean, like you said, people of all different backgrounds and ages and demographics. It's just so powerful, seeing what play and humor can do and the levity it can bring to some of the heaviest situations that we can't even like fathom, a lot of us. My mother just passed away 2 years ago this Christmas,
Mm.
from ALS, and she got it, and then within a year she was gone. And I moved
Mm.
I was working in Colorado, and I moved back to the Detroit, Flint, Michigan area to take care of her
Mm.
with my sisters and my dad as she passed. And it was so, I mean, my whole
Mm.
family will never be the same. We're still putting the
Mm.
pieces back together. And
Mm.
those types of situations, anybody who can come into those situations, they're such difficult situations for anybody to walk into, whether it's your family or whether you're a stranger, whether you're a physician, a healthcare official, a clown, whatever. It's extremely difficult. They're extremely delicate situations. But when someone enters a heartbreaking situation like that with grace, like you and your father are able to do, it's totally paradigm shifting, and I think people like us just view things differently. Like you were saying, like life is meant to be lived and not worked away. Like we're both believers that the 40-hour work week is just modern slavery. There's just all these different levels of, excuse me, enslavement, different levels of, the working class rat race. And, people want to divide themselves into these like substrata of like middle class and whatever. And I think it's so cool that your dad just saw through that and was like, no, we're going to be revolutionary clowns because people need to laugh because there's oppression and heartbreak and death and disease everywhere. And that's a part of life. And we need to accept that. And that I was the only one in my family kind of bringing that element to my mom, to being like, okay, like, you're about to like enter the bardo, like you're gonna be like basically like tripping for a while, like like you're like we don't really know what's gonna happen, but like like this is not the end for you. This is just the next step, and as I'm sure especially from not only growing up how you did, but traveling everywhere in different places in the world, they view death so differently. Like it's such a vital part of life, and these rituals kind of preparing you for death and the art of dying. I believe George Harrison even wrote a song like that. I mean, Yogananda Paramahansa. I don't know if you've ever read any of his work. It's really, really crazy. I mean, to the point where George Harrison of the Beatles and I think Steve
Mm.
Jobs, like of Apple, were like handing out copies to people, which like it's, again the hypocrisy of like so much of this. But magical books. And I was thinking about how Ram Dass, like the Be Here Now guy,
Yeah.
was getting really into palliative care in the 1980s, which is essentially, I feel like, what you and your family have been offering people different levels of palliative care for a long time. And that's still considered kind of revolutionary for a lot of people, offering different levels of comfort to people who are in end of life care, basically. And when I was
Hmm.
working as a journalist in Michigan around 2016, before I moved to Scotland, I went to a conference to cover, a palliative care conference, and the one thing I felt was so starkly missing the entire time was the sense of play and the sense of color and the sense of, paradigm shifting through humor and love and kind of like radical like whimsy, whether it's like puppets or clown costumes or, like silliness. And I thought of Patch Adams then, because I feel like it is a revolutionary approach to just want to help people, and I want to believe that more people are starting to say, hey, wait a minute, there's enough to go around. Why is everyone suffering? Like none of this is making sense right now. I feel like, the American Revolution and the French Revolution kind of happened around the same time back when. And I feel like there's these kind of like cycles of history, and we're kind of ramping up we're in kind of another era like the 60s and the 70s where it's really turbulent and it's, ever since I don't even know. It's hard to put a pinpoint on it, especially for someone like you who's grown up in it. And you know, it's so wild how all of these institutions are designed to defend the status quo and keep people oppressed and, keep people away from having health care so then it will keep them going to their jobs. And, I think it's so amazing when there's a radical community like your father and your family and your comrades and what you're building now. And like you said, kind of like, forging your own identity. And now we're at the age where like a lot of like younger people than us, like they don't even know Patch Adams, but they know you. And like that, like you said, it's so full circle and it's so inspiring because I feel like that's what we really can do. Like you said, the benefit of kind of taking the risk to be forward facing is you can have incredibly, you know, life-changing conversations with someone off the street if they recognize you instead of like the bad parts, the downfalls of the Hollywood shit, like, oh, you're Patch Adams' kids, like, in public, like when you're a child, like super weird. And obviously, it's like the classic Hollywood heartbreak story too, that like, you know, it's more powerful in a way that your dad is able to live as a symbol. And, so many people love Robin Williams and like view him as a wholesome character. And that's like one of the most like wholesome, like heartwarming, inspiring, movies in his catalog. So it's like there's like this archetype, right? Like the clown archetype and the healer archetype and the shaman, medicine man, medicine woman, archetype. And I feel like that is really being carried on through that. And I recently with a friend had watched the documentary on Pepe the Frog. Have you seen this yet? I think it's called like Yeah Dude or Hey Man or something like that. And it's all
Is it
about
like how it became a right-wing symbol?
right, because originally it's like a guy like us, like a, hippie, colorful stoner guy. And I think it also was like, I can't forget his name. It's killing me now because he's like the nicest guy. And I think it really for him was also like a symbol, like for him and his friends, like the four of them lived together. And one of his friends, I feel like passed away. And Pepe was almost like a symbol for that. And like it was just supposed to be like a funny, silly thing. Like he pees like with his pants on his ankles, like standing up, like that type of thing. And somehow it got co-opted into this, and that's what the documentary delves into, how
Hmm.
it became a right-wing, thing and the mysteries of like 4chan and the weirdness of QAnon. And because obviously we know the Pizzagate stuff, like all the Epstein stuff, that was like real, but like somehow I don't understand how QAnon like relates to any of this. I don't really know, but the documentary was getting into it a little bit and about this like beta male uprising, like the incel thing, and like it's almost like the polar opposite of what we're trying to do, right? And it's kind of like the dangers and the pitfalls of like, the powers of symbolism and the scary tyrannical insanity of like corporate greed in Hollywood. And, part of the documentary then gets into the artist like taking legal action to shut down any use of it as a right-wing symbol, like as if that's really even possible. But he can get legal reparations and royalties in some cases. So like, I'm happy for him in that way. But it's just crazy,
Uh,
like kind of where we're at, and that there are so many people. I mean, I see it because I teach high school now, and I'm in the Jack Kerouac School, getting my MFA now, which was started by Anne Waldman and Allen
well,
Ginsberg. And
I see your email. It's
oh yeah,
Naropa.
Europa.
Are
Yeah,
you at Naropa?
yeah.
Um, yeah, I was gonna ask you this at the beginning, but yeah, like one of my best friends and like clown sisters and spiritual mentors. We've been on going on the clown trips for like 20 years together. She has a transpersonal psychology master's from Europa,
Wow, that's so
and
cool.
and then went on to be in Malidoma Some's like ancient technologies spiritual cohort until he died.
Whoa, 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 whoa. That's incredible.
And
That's
she's been talking about going back to get her clinical because,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, all the levels. You kind of like have the hoops you have to jump through for the different hierarchies.
like she's so perfect for it already and so beyond capable, but has to go
You get the piece of paper.
and has the other friends that have done that. She's got a lot of people in her like community who do have the clinical side and they're like, yeah, dude, yeah, dude. More school.
Exactly. Yeah. When I was in Scotland, living in Edinburgh, excuse me, in Edinburgh, I did a program through Cambridge so I can teach English as a second language anywhere in the world. Because I have some friends that are in conservation in Africa, in South Africa specifically. And shout out to Matt Lindenberg and the GCC, the Global Conservation Corps. They're like the vanguard of the fight to keep what rhinos are left alive. And they've also started a ranger school because they're guarding these rangers around the clock. The rangers are guarding the rhinos around the clock, 24 hours a day now, because they could just sedate the rhino and take the horn, but it's faster to kill them, so they're just extincting, making them extinct. And it's just kind of crazy how all of these struggles are interrelated. And I'm really hoping that I can go down there to teach English and be a part of the conservation ranger school at some point. But like again, all of these struggles are related, and in order, it's funny because I have like the certificate from Cambridge, but in order to teach any level above high school, I still need more school. So
Mhm.
my partner, she's amazing, Cindy Keith. She is in the somatic psychology department at Naropa University. So she's also, studying, somatic psychology and dance movement therapy. DMT
Mhm.
is her degree,
Mhm.
which is really funny. And when I was like at a party with some other people from Naropa, they just thought I was in the Jack Kerouac school already. And I was like, what? I never even heard of this.
Mhm.
And I grew up reading and loving the beats, so I was really, really happy to then join. I figured, fuck it, why not? My mom had just died. I just got divorced from my wife, my partner of over 11 years. And,
Mhm.
my girlfriend Cindy and I, we like left corporate life behind. We were like, right, work. She was running the German publishing department. I was running the English publishing department for one of the biggest woo-woo websites out there. Yeah, I'll tell you about it later. But we left corporate life behind to go back to school because we just want to help people. It's like I've been a teacher and a journalist, and I've never been paid a living wage, my entire life until I was working for this corporation, which in itself might be controlled opposition. I mean, the CEO of that company is like friends with like Sting and like Jeff Bezos and like not friends with them, but like has their numbers and like, which is scary. Like I feel like some of these people aren't even real sometimes, and I'm glad that I just saw like Billie Eilish and Elvis Presley's granddaughter, Riley something. There was some like banquet and they just like turned to the table with like Bezos and Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and was like, you guys could fix everything. Like, and you're not. And you're not. Like, like where's your humanity? And there's like
Billy said that. Billy said that to them.
yeah, and there's like a picture of, or I guess some footage I haven't seen enough yet of like Zuckerberg just like looking at the table, like how do they live with themselves? That's what it always, kills me. The writer Joyce Carol Oates, she's elderly now, and she called out Elon Musk on Twitter recently and was like, you're always talking about numbers and money, and like you clearly don't, enjoy life for the things we're talking about, that we're fighting for, that are so vitally important, being a part of nature, connecting with other humans, defending animals and plant life, and, having hobbies, creating things, embracing art, whether it's music or film or memes or spirituality, exercise practices. Like, no, none of these millionaires, billionaires types like are, talking about anything like that. It's always just like really hollow, propagandized, capitalist rhetoric. And, Elon just responded like, Joyce Carol Oates is a liar, like, or whatever. And like someone like retweeted the whole thing. It was like, ooh, he mad. That was like going viral. And it's like, man, like we live in absurd times. And,
Mm.
it's one of my professors had said, violence comes from a lack of imagination. And I was saying, I think violence comes, through necessity. It's like I've been vegan and
I
vegetarian a lot of my life, and Anthony Bourdain was always like really against vegetarian and vegans. And the more you read and research Anthony Bourdain's travels, he like talks about he's like because people can't afford that everywhere, and it's essentially racist if you're against people eating meat where that's the only thing they can afford, right? And so it's like you said, holding multiple truths at once is important, but at the same time, I'm clearly we're more pacifist leaning people, but at what point, there's like the classic things that we always share, it's like the whole, push the button, like to fix things, but someone die. It's like the whole theoretical question. It's like, well, the billionaires are pushing those buttons all the time. They're killing people every single day. And I think stuff like the Luigi Mangione case is starting to make people realize, oh my gosh, we have so much power. This one young guy with a gun took out someone who was profiting from all sides of this evil equation while people are dying because they're being denied healthcare. And this is kind of the
I
hill
don't think
that your
I
dad
I
chose.
don't think I don't think he did it.
Yeah, same. He's only
I
accused.
ge
So.
genuinely I don't think he did
I
it.
also
Uh,
genuinely
but
don't think so either. There's too many pictures that
but
pop
I
up.
I do think the person who did, I do think about them, and I'm like, damn, you just chilling. No one's on to you. Are you planning something next? Are you just gonna chill? Or were you hired by your one of his? Anyways, we don't need to go down that conspiracy lane.
Oh,
But
there's so many
I,
rabbit holes here.
I, I, I was my dad is a conscientious objector. He avoided the Vietnam War by being a conscientious objector, um, and he was an army brat. So he was raised on the army bases because his dad was a high up officer, uh, And so when my dad was born, he was like lived on Japanese military like bases in Japan post World War II, and then bases in Germany post World War II until he was like 15 or 16. Uh,
Wow.
and he saw how war destroyed his father and led him to have no relationship with his father. And so my dad has just been like strongly like pacifist, like revolutionary, but pacifist, like not, he was not really, yeah, he doesn't have like that kind of violent bone in his body. And that's not for him. And that's not the world he's trying to envision. And so he's, um, and I was definitely like raised in that world. And then I started to decolonize a lot more and
Yeah.
um, listen to a lot of non-white revolutionaries and reading their teachings and really understanding the normalization of violence against especially Black and Brown and Indigenous people throughout history, and then the inherent violence of poverty that um, doesn't need to be that way, like systemic poverty and systemic racism. That, and we live in like the imperial core. We live in the most violent, terroristic country in modern history. And and we have 800 military bases around the world. There's no way it's going to go down without a fight.
Yeah.
And so I really believe there's infinite roles to fill on the path towards collective liberation and towards the end of the empire, and in dreaming and building new, better systems of community care and care for the environment. But that, yeah, like in the same way that I won't condemn Hamas, like I believe that all oppressed people have a right to armed resistance. Um, and I know that's not everybody's role, but I do think if we are committed to the path of collective liberation, where we do want to build worlds that are, more just and loving and caring and playful and not misogynistic, racist,
Mhm.
uh, that we all have to protect and take care of those who are brave enough to resist in those ways.
Yeah.
And we do need to start reframing how to not like to undo our desensitization and talk about how poverty is violence, how not giving people housing and food and healthcare is violence, and how, yeah, the police are obviously inherently a racist, violent institution with that is unreformable. And if reform worked, then these systems would take better care of us. And I think it's becoming abundantly clear to more working class people, not fast enough, unfortunately,
Yeah.
that their systems are not going to serve our basic human needs. And I, because my dad normalized speaking up my whole life, and then I've been doing it. I've, lost many friends throughout my life who were just like, "You're too political. Why are you talking about it?" Like through varying degrees of that. And then that's why I like eventually became grateful to have my page.
Yeah.
and even from the start, I was just like feeling a sense of community, feeling a space that I wasn't going to judge myself for what I wanted to post, whether it was like nonsensical, irreverent, like pee memes and like fart shit, uh,
Stuff.
to
Like,
like being more subversive and like
mm,
or the like wholesome, um, working on the inner world, because I really believe we have to like liberate ourselves from, that's part of decolonizing. We have to like shed all of our colonial programming, from how we think about ourselves to how we think about others and our systems. And so that's why like I really love the open-ended cosmic permission slip that is abnormalized being. It's not uh, like, as long as we are rejecting the myth of normal and a sense of conforming to oppressive systems and to violent systems, that my knowing about the necessity of violent resistance is rooted in like the deepest love and desire to see the end of the violent oppressive
yeah.
systems. And we've seen that they don't do anything when we ask nicely, or we try to go through all of the legal like ways to challenge these systems or reform them, or like I I really, and I know I have to be patient. I used to be more like a guns a blazing, like, why aren't you? And like being on a little bit more of like a moral high horse, or think, like, which leads you to being like in a right or wrong or better than. And I've like got to a point in my decolonization, which is an active practice. It doesn't stop, and I won't stop. I can't get comfortable in that. But like I'm at the point in my decolonizing practice where like I know if I want to deprogram the white supremacy within me and within my mind, I have to let go of anything or anyone being better than anything or anyone. I have like the supreme supremacy, the supreme, like thinking anyone is better than anyone.
Yeah.
I have to like completely let go of that
Yeah.
and stop. I don't want to be on a pedestal, and I don't want to put others on a pedestal. And I like, I know that that helps me stay humble and to want to connect with other people's humanity. And I do think that's where like, yeah, clown and play come in. I really do believe that we can build bridges through humor, and we can also diffuse violence through humor and puppetry and shenanigans. And we can also, in tandem with, let's say, 5 or 10 other actions that are happening in a city that's in resistance, two teams of very loud, attention grabbing, goofing disruption can take a lot of attention of those that think they have to stop it. And then while all of that attention is on the silly shenanigans, maybe the more dangerous actions targeting properties, or
Yeah.
I think they all serve purposes. I think I've been going to actions throughout my life, and I think, yeah, there's always going to be infiltrators, and that's always something to be aware of.
Yeah.
But not all people breaking the windows of a bank are infiltrators.
Yeah.
And so we need to not necessarily peace police actions. I really do, as someone who like felt a need to in my early time, like, oh no, let's diffuse. And, like every situation is different, of course. Like if it looks like a cop and smells like a cop, then it's probably an infiltrator. But
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
It's tough. I mean, it's because I feel like how you feel in the way of like I've lost so many friends just from speaking out about things, and I really don't want to come at things from like a moral high horse, side of things. Because like you said, we're all, you said something earlier, like maybe even before we were filming, is we just need to meet everyone where they're at. I mean, that's the only way we're going to spread class consciousness and find unity through community in a way that could actually overthrow the regime. Because, like you said, it's 800 military bases worldwide. I mean, they have the technology and the resources. They're organized, right? And it also goes back to everybody having their own role in a revolution. I've been seeing so many people like criticize the blow up costume frogs movement from Portland or something, but you made such a good point that it's a very look over here type of thing. Oh, my face, and like I actually just watched a great film about Django Reinhardt, the famous guitar player, and the whole his whole community and him trying to get them out of France, during the World War II movement because he was being used as an entertainer by the Third Reich, but then he got, word that the Nazis were going to kill all the gypsies, basically, and they did kill way too many. I mean, it's like what's happening now. And what he was able to actually do for the resistance is really historic because he was already in with them and then fled, and then they caught him. And so he said, "Okay, I'll do one last like big concert for you or whatever because you got me." And then while they did this big concert, it was like threefold. He did this big concert. They were able to sneak his whole community across the water, I think, into Switzerland. And then also the armed faction was able to do a hit on a bunch of Nazi supply trains and stop them. So it was like an incredibly effective one night, multiple coordinated efforts between different activists, like freeing refugees, attacking their supply lines, and distracting the officers. I mean, this is the type of coordination that we need to move into. And when you start studying history, it's the poets, it's the musicians, it's the writers, it's the filmmakers, it's the clowns who are the activists. They're the ones, leading these lives, which sometimes can be double lives, working in these high, points of elevation. I think about, you were talking about learning from past revolutionaries. I was gonna hold up this book because I've been citing it a lot for my thesis, Blood in My Eye
mm,
by George L. Jackson. And a lot of people know him for Soul Dad Brother, but this book is the last one he wrote. He knew he was gonna get killed. I mean, and this is
mm,
before the Attica prison riots, murderings, but
mm,
he knew they could just kill you in jail. And obviously we talked about infiltration. I'm not sure if you've seen Judas and the Black Messiah, all about Fred
mm,
Hampton. Incredible,
mhm,
dramatization,
mhm,
all of that, but just absolutely mind-blowing how they were able to infiltrate the Panthers like that. And, Fred Hampton is my hero in every way. I mean, Asada Shakur, Angela Davis, George Jackson, Fred Hampton, they're the big ones for me because they're so, just like you, you're very thoughtful with your words. You're really eloquent. I feel like you're coming at a place from like equalizing, like trying to find equity for people, and like Fred Hampton's whole Rainbow Coalition movement, the fact that he was going into like meetings of like poor blue collar working class whites with like Confederate flags on the walls and like finding middle ground with them. And same thing with Puerto Rican gangs, Latino gangs, like he really was trying to build a Rainbow Coalition because again, all these, division tactics, it's like people play into it so horribly with the left versus right, the Democrats versus Republicans, black versus white, gay versus straight, I mean, even
uh,
like the trans.
the tankies, you're not left enough for me, and I'm just on my moral high horse, and I love Stalin, and it's like, uh, do you have any,
Bad
do
word
you
about
have any,
right?
do you have any Russian friends?
My friend from Greece I was telling you about, he's like, we need to be like careful of just like, saying, oh, Russia's great, China's great. Like actually when my professor was just talking about this, that Allen Ginsberg, his friend Amiri Baraka was a really famous African American poet, and he was like a big Maoist. And one time they were getting into it, like Ginsberg and Baraka were disagreeing on stage. And some lady stood up, an Asian American lady, and she's like, Mao killed my entire family. Like that's why I fled. And Baraka was like, that's New York Times propaganda. She's like, I'm here because they killed my entire family. That's why I moved to the Bay Area when I was like two, and like there's so many stories like that of displacement and refugees from these different, levels of genocide. I mean, obviously everything China did to Tibet, and everything, it's so crazy. Like you said, we kind of just have like everybody will have these
Yeah.
high grounds for
I condemn all governments everywhere.
exactly. That's why Ursula
And
is
and
an anarchist.
e- and I like and I'm, you know, have a little suspicion of all politicians anywhere. And I like and I can still honor and hold multiple truths at once and like, you know, celebrate certain qualities that I'm like, yeah, that was really bold and brave and it needed to be said,
Yeah.
and without just fully being like, they could do no wrong. No, we're all imperfect, and uh, anyone who's hungry enough for power can be corrupted.
Hmm.
And like money and power corrupts pretty much everybody,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
I
And
always
so,
every ism can be bent into fascism, right? So, and it is. We have historical examples, you know. Think about this is one of the two books I have by this guy, Jason Hickel, Dr. Jason Hickel. He wrote Less is More in this book, The Divide. I think he's a professor at a university
oh,
in
his tweets are amazing, right?
incredible, right? And he's
Yeah, and he's got an anthropology degree, I
yeah.
think.
Right, that might be what he's a professor in now, like anthropology and sociology at this conservation university in Barcelona. And
I read every tweet of his.
me
No, and
too.
he's so brilliant.
He's so brilliant. I've been reading his books and he's so brilliant. And he talks about kind of the cycles of history
Mm.
and, these different movements, labor movements and everything like that, and how the ecological crisis is becoming a poly crisis because we're going to be on like this refugee planet with like water wars and like, the global north exploiting the global south and everything like this. And it's interesting because I feel like in the time that we've been following Jason Hickel, he's getting more popular, and he even was able to speak to the Spanish Parliament like a month ago or something, and his speech to their parliament was incredible. And it's so interesting to me, like, because I would have a difficult time being in these spaces because I have a difficult time, like, people will, say, like, oh, you're critical of China, you're not a real leftist. Or, you like Terrence McKenna, like, he was against ideology. Like, you need to pick some ideology. Like, like you said, there's all these people have these moral high horses. And sometimes in our type of spaces, you can feel like a minefield. Like, you're not hip enough, or you're not left enough, or you're not this enough. And I think, that's another reason why I love what you put into the world, because you preach acceptance so hard and you really practice what you preach, and you're constantly community building and doing events and kind of like, I feel like both of us have like so many different irons in the fire, with all these different projects. And, I think that's the way to empower people, is by sharing resources and sharing art and sharing education, and not being holier than thou about stuff, because that's just more division amongst comrades, right?
And like I share plenty and collaborate on plenty that is like provoking in dividing ways. Um, and I don't, yeah, like I just know that we're all like wildly imperfect, and
Yeah.
I would, yeah, I think it's hard to really instill like all of my approach into a viewer.
Right.
Um,
Like there's no one demographic, there's no one size fits all.
and and when when I wasn't collaborating on with hundreds of pages around the world every week, it was easier for me to like hold a container of like I know what I want people to encounter on my page.
Right.
Uh, but I then realized when I had a platform and the live stream genocide started, and I like saw and knew how the shadow ban and censorship and that like the people that hadn't like built a platform yet that were speaking on really important things, that I could let go of like a sense of control and like filtering everything that I put on my page and just accept like from my position of privilege and uh having the platform that like, and as a, you know, even though I'm non-binary, the world perceives me as a man, and I'm not gonna fight with them about it.
Mhm.
Um, and like, yeah, obviously I'm like a, descendant of colonizer, and like I am actually related to John Adams and John Quincy Adams, and um, my ancestors were on the first boats, were on the Nina, were the original settlers, and
Mayflower.
also like had a had a big plantation in Virginia, and um, I like when I finally really learned that about the history of my family, I was like, okay, I want to commit my life to supporting the like tearing down the institutions and systems that my ancestors brought to this land. And I feel like it's a part of my like sense of duty, not from a place of guilt, but from a place of like healing the generational trauma that my ancestors brought to this land. Um, and and I have like a, one of my hyperfixations as a chaotic, you know, ADHD clown, uh, is that like internet culture, memes and revolution.
Mhm.
And, um, and so I'm willing to sacrifice my screen time and brain for the in this moment of my life in this exploration, um, for our collective, and knowing that we're in deep, painful, growing pains of coming to the terms with the deep programming and necessity of like the empire falling, uh, and that for generations, long before I was born, there's trillions of dollars have been spent on the propaganda machine to indoctrinate all of us, and that has spread around the world to, we've exported it
Mhm.
in all the different ways. And so I knew that like only I could be a propaganda platform the way I would do it, and that I couldn't expect anyone else to do it the way I would do it,
Ugh.
and that I don't write enough, but I do want to start writing more because
I'm gonna
I
ask you, like the way you speak, so beautiful.
I do dream of writing a book about being like a meme anthropologist and a clown anthropologist, and uh, chronically online millennial that has been obsessed with
Yeah.
memes, and I started my page as just a meme page,
Right.
where I didn't post videos. It was still like definitely left leaning, but I was more subversive. Before I had the platform, I was like, I'm gonna catch people with the memes and the ha ha he he, the LOLs, the sweet, the absurd, but then just slowly start putting in within that more and more, like, rejecting capitalism, or um, you know, provocative things. I do believe in order to challenge programming, we also have to be provocative.
Yeah.
And so I think it can be hard. And I wish I could do more aftercare IRL with humans if they're like, that post really fucking challenged me.
Totally. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You said
yeah,
something beautiful earlier. Again, it's kind of like this, meeting people where they're at type of thing, because I'm like afraid to even talk to certain friends. I've lost certain friends, whether they're, libertarians or Democrats or communists or socialists or anarchists, like I am the type of person that's looking for the common threads within all of these things. And I love the Terence McKenna quote that, ideology is toxic, and they can be traded, but I'm also, very like anti AOC and Bernie, and I feel like Zoran Mamadi is another Mamadani. I'm pronouncing his name wrong probably. And I have friends because I'm from Michigan, and there's like the highest concentration of people from the Middle East outside of the Middle East is in Dearborn, Michigan, right outside of Detroit. So plenty of my friends are Muslim, so they're pumped. Obviously, in general, I'm pumped that the Zionists are pissed, that the Cuomos and the Musks of the world are pissed, and what was it you said? You don't want to shit on people who are celebrating, but you said it better than that.
no, yeah, we, before we
Yeah.
like started recording, I was saying, um, you were asking about like Mamdani, and I was saying, like, I think for me in my practice, given my lived experience and my philosophy from where I'm at and wanting to build class consciousness and build bridges, and it is really challenging. Uh, but I do think it's really important to meet people where they're at, and to hold as many truths at once as possible, knowing that like each human, through the amalgamation and alchemy of all of their lived experience, belief systems, cultural conditioning, all of that has their truth.
Yeah, exactly.
And um, was saying, if as long as it's not hurting others or themselves, like I don't want to yuck someone's yum. Um, and sometimes I do believe it's like, yeah, it's really challenging. Like one way, like I think one of the biggest challenges I feel like I'm facing in wanting to build bridges in this moment is like I've been trying to build bridges and support the radicalization and abandonment of the Democrats since before I could vote.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, after the 2000 election and after the Democrats put their tail between their legs and let the election be stolen from them, and Gore just abandoned the Supreme Court case and let them have it, I was like, oh, these are pansies.
Yeah.
And then I just, a year after year, like, to then how they did Bernie dirty both times
Yeah.
when he like clearly would have beaten Trump.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like so many people we know are like reformed Bernie people, because we all saw what happened to Bernie, and now we feel like
and
people like Bernie and
and I was already so disillusioned. Like
right,
in
exactly.
the end, I wasn't surprised
It's all stage,
with
right?
how they did burn. But like the biggest challenge I feel right now for me personally in the bridge building is with liberals and Democratic voters who still believe that like establishment Democrats are a solution when they're clearly like vast majority of them are being funded by APAC. Like that is a hopeful thing with Zoran Mamdani is that he didn't take any APAC money and he won an election.
Mm,
And yeah, I shared a tweet that was like, will the Democrats learn? Probably not. History would say no.
yeah.
But and it's building the bridges with the blue MAGA.
It's
Um,
crazy. I mean, the whole
it,
breath.
it 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 needs to happen,
Yeah, because we
and it's so challenging. Like I won't stop sharing things that are critical of Democrats and liberals, and every time I do, I'm just used to people being like, "You're funded by Russia," or "You're a China bot," or
I got one of those the other day.
you're a MAGA shill." Like, yeah,
Bizarre,
dude,
bizarre.
yeah.
Bizarre takes, you
Uh,
know, and it's
and people are going to perceive in that like I had to just accept, like people are going to write me off because I'm fucking white. People are going to write me off because I'm male presenting.
mm,
People are going to write me off because I'm Patch Adams' kid, or people are going to write me off because I'm like not queer or whatever it is, like I
yeah,
people's perception of me is not my responsibility. Um, and we're gonna have to get creative uh, in the bridge building,
mm,
and I'm gonna continue to challenge myself towards patience and love and desire for working class solidarity
yeah,
um, to get like to support the inevitable, like hopefully the inevitable like blue MAGA and just traditionally hardcore Democrat voters being like they hate us,
yeah,
and we have to be there and not in the I fucking told you so energy, but in the like okay yes
yeah.
I'm thanks for finally realizing let's get to building something that uh, cares about us and isn't in the
Yeah.
pockets of corporations.
Well said. Again, like you said, it comes back to patience and love and humility. You know, you had said something earlier, like never like assume you're reaching, X, or that, like you said, your message is clear or people don't see you as a contradiction, or like you said, everybody's going to project their own lived experiences onto whatever or whoever, and there's nothing we can do about that. And I think it never helps anybody to be smug or smarmy or, I told you so. Like you said, the way to build bridges is through, that type of solidarity that comes without judgment. And I think that's why you and I will post stuff that challenges people and challenges people on all sides of the spectrum. Because really we're just trying to share information, I mean, like I have friends that are so excited Zoran won, and I'm excited for them too, and I'm like I said, like if Zionists are mad, that's great. I mean, the Zionists are the new Nazis and they need to be shut down, and they're part of the corporate, imperialism that's running the world with a fist drenched in blood and ruling everything with genocide and slavery, and obviously like I'll share information sometimes and people will be like, I didn't know that, thank you for sharing, that, or they'll say you're a Russian bot. And I think it again, we just need to be patient because like you said, that almost like the real payoff also becomes in the solidarity that comes in real life, right? How I need to get my beret with my that, because then we end up having
I'm a Russian bot.
there it is. I love it. I know I can put my beret on. it leads to more impactful experiences in real life, right? And that's all we can hope is that maybe people will share something with someone they care about or like have a talking point at a dinner with someone that they, don't share the same viewpoint with. And we need to be building solidarity. So I'm just so glad you do it through silliness and all the animal stuff you share. Like, oh my gosh, one of your Halloween posts, like, with like I don't know, was that in like Mexico City with the SpongeBob and the Patrick? Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, those were so good. And the frog Shakira one, I watched that like a million times. Like seriously, like so again, I'm just so happy you do what you do and like, I
Mm.
you are such a shining light of an example of like not taking yourself too seriously but taking the struggle for collectivism seriously and taking it seriously. Like you said, we need to start translating to people that people being denied housing or healthcare or water or food, this is violence, right? Being enacted on our communities and people we care about, working class backgrounds. It's the 99% versus the 1%. And, we need to like you said, everybody has a role, and I'm really, really grateful that we've connected because I hope we can keep working together to try and empower people.
Yeah. I I talk about it everywhere I go, anywhere. No one is safe. I instead of saying how are you, I'll say like, like another day in the crumbling empire, like, the
Or
empire is falling. Are you ready? Or like
sharing resources. I mean, challenging people.
whoa.
Like, how do you support the Democrats? How do you support the Republicans when like
Mm,
all of them are pedophiles? Like we know what we know about Epstein and the rabbit hole goes so deep with Ghislaine Maxwell and they introduced Trump and Melania together and I was reading about Ghislaine Maxwell's sister runs this whole thing for Israel about anti-Semitism, global awareness, and she's also involved with the Macmillan history books stuff, and it's like our history is not only written by the victors, but by pedophiles, apparently, too, and that also underlines the importance of organizing and sharing resources and, staying
mm,
in touch, which, yeah, maybe before to wrap this up here, I know you are taking a break from Instagram right now. And before
mm,
we started filming, we were kind of talking about trying to organize. I've been seeing more people talk about it organized movement away from meta platforms or these platforms that are owned by the corporations. I saw some influencer was on like one of those Subway takes, videos, and she was saying we need to do it. But the irony is that the movement will start within these platforms, start within Twitter, or X, or Facebook, or TikTok, or Instagram. These are all corporations being funded with blood money and probably all owned by BlackRock, I believe. I mean, I heard that the youngest Trump, what's his name? Barron Trump was going to start running. He's going to be like the CEO of TikTok now or so. I can't keep up. But so maybe we can talk a little bit about the importance of,
mm.
organizing in real life. I'm gonna turn on a light here. And maybe moving away from some platforms so we can try and find more solidarity in real life or, you know,
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be back on Instagram, like, because some people need support and amplifying. Um, but one of the things I'm gonna amplify is actually how you can file a complaint, like a consumer complaint, to the Attorney General of your state,
mm,
around the censorship and suppression and shadow banning, as an infringement on First Amendment rights.
oh wow.
And that if enough people do it in your state and you're persistent and you stay on it and you reach out and you're like, who's on my case? And that it could lead to a mediation, which could, which it had in the past. This was during the Biden administration, led to this comrade being having those things lifted from their page. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna I'm willing to try a legalese thing. Like, isn't that where we're supposed to have an attorney general and these like a potential checks and balances? So
Yeah.
I am curious, like it's worth a shot, and I'm curious, and it is a matter of free speech, and it also I think it's part of the contradiction. Like I'm really grateful for Instagram. It's been a platform I've been able to explore curation and community building and connecting with the comrades that I'm meant to be connected to. And it's, especially in these past 4 years, led to so many real world connections of people that are really dear friends now, and community organizers and organizations that I'm like meant to be connected to and working with. Um, and so it is a tool for if we use it as one. Uh, but it is also, it's not lost on me that I'm making them millions of dollars through the data that they collect from my page, which I think is the only reason they haven't taken away my ability to collaborate, because they just get so much data from all of those collaborations, etc.
Yeah.
And also the attention, because like I post a lot of 20 slide dumps that are often videos, which is like they calculate all of that and they see that people spend minutes every day on posts I either make or am collaborating on.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, a lot, I get really encouraging, heartfelt messages. I was telling you before I think we started that like I don't assume impact. I want to like stay in my like humility and not in a sense of like I can change people, because that's not the point. Like everything I post is just as much a reminder to me as it is to anyone it reaches or resonates with. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and and it's been clear for so long now that like the enshittification of TikTok, Twitter, um, Instagram, Facebook, uh, and as millennials, we've seen so many platforms and social medias and things come and go and be fads, RIP Vine, RIP AIM, like
MSN Messenger.
freaking I'm from like the IRC days. Like I go back into internet forum
My
in
God.
the dial-up internet. But
GeoCities, Angel Fire chat rooms that we probably shouldn't have been in, but
oh, absolutely. But uh, I, I think I'm gonna be on Instagram because that's where I have my biggest platform. That's where I have the most potential to reach a stranger who might not be exposed. And as much as like I will start migrating and trying to use other platforms, and I mean, I know I'm long overdue for figuring out a way to just make my post, like at least the posts I curate and put together, immediately posted onto like a blog or my Patreon or somewhere, so that people don't have to have Instagram to still keep up with my posts.
exactly.
And I'm like on up scroll, and it's clearly like a new fledgling possibility, in part created with Palestinian team. But it's a tiny echo chamber right now.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some time for us to, but when people are like, I can't be on social media anymore, I'm like, don't, it's not for you. I'm on there so you don't have to be. Like
That's
committed. I'm
that's
committed to this anti-empire propagandist life in this moment of my life. I really understand if that's not for you, and doesn't have to be. Like, there's so many ways you can show up. I was gonna say I really wanted to. One thing that's been giving me life most recently is, going to events and going to spaces, and I've been meaning to go to All Power Books for like years almost now, and I finally went for their around their Halloween party
Mm,
and immediately fell in love with it, and it felt like very welcoming and like, oh yeah, this book community gathering space where they're like practicing Marxism and they're doing really interesting things and they have a free clinic there and um, are bringing in, the other out of state radicals to do workshops and teach-ins and etc. And like, so if, for everyone out there, like go see if you have an anarchist or a right wing or not right wing, like a radical or like left commie, whatever kind of community gathering space. See what mutual aid, see if there's any mutual aid places that have a physical space
right.
in your town and start there and see who you meet there.
Yeah.
And then I just found out this other one, Midnight Books, is like 3 blocks. They moved into a new location, I guess 6 months ago, but it's 3 blocks from where I live. And I went to this um, Palestinian event that was happening yesterday where they were interviewing live journalists that are in Gaza and had their photos printed out in Midnight Books. And I was like, wow, this is right in my neighborhood. I'm gonna start coming here way more.
It's awesome.
And yeah, so I'm open to new platforms arising. The growing pains and transitions are difficult. I actually like deleted TikTok because it's like, but the internet archivist in me is like, well, if shit goes down, I'm probably gonna re-download it because it is a place to put a finger on the pulse of what's happening.
Totally. I mean, and I think that's a huge part of it, right? Is just like that awareness of like, yes, we know they're collecting our data. We know these corporations are, making money off of us and the ad revenue and, the time people are doom scrolling, but you're like the anti-doom scroller. You're posting content that's giving people hope and love and light and like in a real way, not in like this, like, like there's all these like, you know, white with the like capital H white women of like Boulder who are like these like yoga crystal ladies who are like love and light and like they're not actually helping people in any way. Like you're actually sharing education and resources. And so I think having that awareness of okay, yeah, they're surveilling us, they're collecting our data, they're making money, but the visibility you have and the reach you have, it's like that's it's the double edges of the sword, right? It's two sides of the same blade. And I think having that awareness is really key. And again, it also enables us to not only share resources and education, but also the light side of the revolution and potentially real life, IRL meetups and because that can happen just from going to poetry readings or going to concerts or like open mics. I'm going to go to an open
Hmm.
mic with a friend tonight and
Yeah. Wear
usually
your keffiyeh,
exactly.
flag to the people, and then the people come to you. So if you're in any way comfortable with, like, when I wear a keffiyeh, I usually meet someone I'm meant to meet. Like I wear my middle finger hat all the
I
time.
love your middle finger hat. Yeah,
And,
I've seen.
um,
I need to get my beret. So good.
and like, and it's,
So good.
and it's a trick. It's a trap. It's a way to cap, cap get
Like
people to
second week.
interact.
Again.
Get, and people might just look at me. People will just look at me and they'll be like, "Oh, this guy just loves attention and blah blah blah," but they don't know that it's just like a part of my ongoing social experiment to
Right.
get people to interact and engage with me in playful ways.
Right. And like that's, I mean, it's the ultimate irony. I feel like, that
Hmm.
some people don't really understand the value of being silly or being like loud, whether it's like with colors or whatever. I knocked my fan broke, my lamp knocked down. I'm a mess today, but I love
Oh
the
yeah.
your Russian hat on. So, sometimes I feel like people are afraid to wear berets or keffiyehs, out in public, let alone a middle finger hat. And I think it's important that we kind of empower each other to, be silly,
Yeah.
be loud, to be proud of who you are and share who you are and share resources and share education because we're kind of in this era where it's like do or die at this point. Like you said, since the 90s, you've been kind of educating yourself about the ecological crisis and how we might be heading into like mass devastation. When I was young, people would say, "Oh, there's going to be wars fought over the Great Lakes." And then they'd say, "No, that'll never happen." And now like the water from the Great Lakes is being shipped everywhere. Water from Colorado is being shipped to California. It's just we need to take action for not only ourselves and our communities, but like the future generations and indigenous communities have been this is all they've ever said is that, nature only asks us to protect it. Otherwise, it cradles us, and I think that's part of where we're at now is we're in this movement is whether young people want to consider themselves communists or socialists. I think we're all ecologists and anthropologists and memologists, trying to share information for the betterment of the world because we are in an ecological crisis. And I think we need to get active. And I want to believe class consciousness is spreading and rising. And Jason Hickel had shared something the other day that 3% of all the Earth's resources could completely take care of everyone. Everyone could have housing, water, clothing, food, healthcare, internet, Wi-Fi, everything like that, with 3% of the surplus that's, still currently being generated. So I want to believe we're at, kind of the crux of change, and voices like yours are vital because you're offering lightness to kind of a dark world right now. So I really appreciate it. And we can wrap this up. I think this is probably gonna
Yeah.
be like the one of many interviews to come. And like I said,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
gonna be in
definitely.
LA New Year's, and then I'm moving there next summer. And I kind of have some loose plans to try and start making like a documentary with some friends, like interviewing Travis, Buddy Head, some other people. So we'll definitely keep in touch in that way. It could be fun. Like you said, we have to. I have a website for Underflow, underflowrecords.com, which now we've kind of launched this podcast, the Underflow Podcast. And we also have like a web page for resources for the unhoused and just
Mm,
kind of sharing things of that nature. And same idea with the documentary. And like you were saying, so there can be a website that isn't owned by these social media corporations where you could post updates of, events and things that are happening. It's really just an artist collective. That's what Underflow is. Just I have so many friends
mm.
doing so many cool things, and I want to help empower the people. So
Yeah.
thank you for your time, Lars, and thank you for all
Yeah. Much
you
love, dude.
power to the people. Much love to you. Keep
Absolutely.
in touch.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Enough is
Ha
enough
ha
is
for now.
enough is enough.